The emergence of COVID-19 has forced the legal industry to rapidly undergo a fundamental transformation. I'm Jack Newton, CEO and co-founder of Clio, the world's leading cloud-based legal software provider. In each episode of Daily Matters, we'll explore what this new normal means for law firms, how legal professionals can find success while working remotely, and how lawyers can best serve their clients during this unprecedented situation. Today, I'm here with Mike Semanchik, managing attorney of the California Innocence Project. Mike, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, we've made a habit of opening this podcast with one question, and that is, how are you and your family doing?
Generally, we're okay. My son actually was sick with a bit of a cough going like 2.5 weeks back, and so we're kind of like a little stressed. Oh, maybe he's got it. Maybe we're going
I
to
can
get it.
imagine.
But it's really turned out to be it's kind of gone to the wayside, and it's fine. But otherwise, yeah, we're generally okay. We're just cooped up in a tiny 750 square foot apartment.
And tell us a little bit more about your situation. Where are you, and what are the current orders that are in force?
So I'm in San Diego, California, and our governor ordered us to stay at home. If you're an essential employee for whatever, that might be, so healthcare, or maybe you work at a grocery store or something, then you can still go to work. But for us, we're at home. We're not non-essential employees. And our mayor actually went one step further and closed down all the parks and trails and beaches and the ocean. Essentially, you can't get in the
Wow.
water. So even if you do want to leave your house, you're pretty restricted as far as what you can and can't do.
So does that mean there's no surfing in San Diego right now?
There is no surfing right now.
Wow.
And I actually was I've been going for runs a lot of days just to see what's going on out there. And Sunday was the first day they shut all the parking lots down because there were too many people frequenting the beach. And then Monday they actually stationed police officers at all of the entry points to the ocean, basically. And if anybody got in, they would just call the lifeguards and tell them to go down there and
Wow.
get everybody out of the
Wow.
water. So yeah.
Well, San Diego is one of my favorite cities in the US, and when you're down there, you see how integral things like surfing and hiking and getting outdoors are to the community there. And here in Vancouver, we've seen a similar shutdown of many popular trails and the beaches as well. And it's made a tough situation even tougher in some ways, but it feels like the right public health measures. Mike, I'd love to talk a little bit about what's on your mind most right now. What are you concerned about? How do you think about approaching this crisis? Would love just to see what is at the top of your mind right now.
Um, Personally, obviously, it's health and safety of friends and family and everybody, and making sure that all of my friends and family are doing what they should, which is stay home. Professionally, uh, there's so I work at the California Innocence Project, as you said, and so we're thinking a lot about our clients and the fact that they don't have the ability to kind of isolate themselves in a safe and healthy way because they're incarcerated. And so that's kind of what's been on my mind as far as this whole thing. And then, just kind of thinking, how long is this going to last? Obviously, I want it to last as long as it needs to in order to keep everybody as healthy as possible. But at the same time, we need to get back to work and try to get people out of prison that shouldn't be there in the first place. So kind of all of those things.
Yeah, we'll go deeper into the impacts of COVID-19 and in the jails and the individuals that you're helping navigate the landscape there. But maybe before we get there, can you just tell us a little bit more broadly, what does the California Innocence Project do? What's your mandate, and maybe a little bit more about your personal history there?
Sure. So the California Innocence Project works to free the wrongfully convicted from prison, and we focus primarily on Southern California. In a given year, we get somewhere around 1,500 requests for assistance. So every single year, 1,500 new people write to us and say, "Hey, I'm innocent, I'm in prison, and I need some assistance getting out of here." We end up doing full-blown investigations on, I would say, about 100 to 150 of those cases. So we cut it down quite a bit. A lot of the people that are writing to us say that they might have issues that we're not going to deal with, or maybe their appeal isn't final, or they're still going through trial, so they're not really ready for us to step in. They have lawyers helping them in other areas. Uh, but so we're looking for people that are innocent and incarcerated, and it's our job to try to get them out. So since our office opened in 1999, we have freed 30 people who spent collectively 460 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit.
Wow.
Uh, and the longest wrongful incarceration that we've won was 36 years, and the shortest I want to say was 4 years. So everywhere from somebody that spent 4 years in prison to over 3 decades. And I think the average for our office is around 22 years when you look at all of the people that we've freed. Um, so that's kind of the summary of what CIP does. I got involved in my first week of law school. I showed up. I actually went to law school thinking I was going to prosecute white collar crime. It was kind of around the time of the last economic downturn,
Yep.
and so I thought, like, I wanted to go work for the SEC, try to put away Bernie Madoff and those
Yep.
types of folks.
Yep.
And the very first week of law school, I sat in on a session where a guy named Tim Atkins uh, came to the law school to talk to students, and he talked about how he had spent 23 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He had been home for 4 months, and I was 23 years old. And so this guy had spent my entire life in prison for something he didn't do. And he
Wow.
said, "There's thousands more just like me. Uh, so come, work for CIP if you can as a student." And so I got in as a clinic student, and really haven't looked back.
Well, you guys do truly exceptional work at the California Innocence Project, and we have as you know, a customer story video that we made of you and your team at the California Innocence Project, and highlighting a few of the stories there. And even though I've watched that video dozens of times, it still moves me deeply every time I watch it. It's just such important work you're doing. And I'm curious, pivoting to the COVID-19 situation, what did the practicalities of having to send the team to work from home and move to a fully distributed environment look like? Can you just tell us what that transition looked like and how you're trying to keep things moving to the extent you are?
Yeah, certainly it was a challenge. As I said, we get 1,500 new requests for assistance every year. We typically receive about 4,000 letters that come to the office. So the prison system is still, you know, 20 years behind, if not more. You still have to use a fax machine with a lot of the prisons in order to
Wow.
get access to them for legal visits. So as far as like communicating with our clients, it's very difficult. They can't call us on our cell phones. And so we're not getting phone calls. Letters, we're occasionally stopping by the office to pick up big bins of mail and going through that and seeing what they're saying and trying to respond to those. So there's really been a huge slowdown when it comes to that. As far as some of the other stuff, I mean, we can't really do investigation now. We can't go out and interview witnesses. We're not going to the prison. Originally, our students were still interested in going out and talking to some of our clients and trying to track down witnesses, but we don't want to be the people to bring COVID-19 into a prison
Right.
and be the reason why a lot of our clients end up sick, and a lot of the people that are in there that are essentially helpless from this virus.
Right.
We don't want to be the cause of that. So we canceled all of our prison visits. We held our class on Zoom, and everybody moved home. So practically speaking, it's certainly been a challenge. We have all of our files are electronic, so we're still able to access our files, and we use Clio, so we're able to see where our cases are, and we're able to make changes in that respect. What we were all supposed to be at a conference this week, and that got canceled. So we saved about $16,000 by not going to a conference. And so I reallocated money from a grant and put it towards additional scanners and printers to allow all of our staff to have that at their houses. So they're at least able to have a home office that they can use and make somewhat functional.
Yeah, that's great. So you're still able to access your data, and to the extent you're able to move cases forward, but the just all the cogs in the wheel are kind of stopped in terms of what you need to do to advance the representation of some of your clients.
Definitely, and actually on top of all of that, the courts in California are all currently suspended, so, unless you have something that's like a essentially like a temporary restraining order that you need to get
Hmm.
filed, for the most part, none of the courts are working right now, so all of our cases that were in litigation are on hold right now as well, so,
And what are you hearing from the courts? Are you getting any kind of guidance in terms of we're trying to figure out how we transition to the cloud? We've heard about this Zoom thing and the internet. We're trying to figure that out. Curious, what are you hearing in terms of how the courts are responding, or is it radio silence?
No, the courts have been. I mean, they've been communicating quite a lot. There's certain aspects of the court system that just can't. They won't translate to Zoom. Like you can't. We're not going to bring 12 jurors onto Zoom and have them hear, a case over the internet. That's just not. So essentially, the trials are on hold until I think right now we're well into April, probably looking like we're not going to have any jury trials until May. I think they said no jurors until May. As far as the appeals and stuff, uh, yeah, you're definitely. I don't know that the Court of Appeal has um, video appearance. I don't think they do. I know the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, just ordered the California Department of Corrections to start conducting parole hearings on Zoom, and so because if you don't,
Interesting.
then
Yep.
yeah, so that's one thing that they were already using video technology to allow victims next of kin to come and speak at parole hearings. That's been going since 2014 at least is the first time I saw that happen. So they had the technology already in place. It was just kind of expanding it to the other lawyers and the other folks that would be involved in a hearing. So some parts of the criminal justice system are kind of a little bit further along, but some are just not going to be able to get there. And I think the trial court system is certainly one of those. So.
So beyond the impacts the California Innocence Project is seeing on itself, what impacts are you seeing COVID-19 have on the people you represent?
Yeah. Well, we actually have a client that is set to be released. So the governor commuted her sentence and made her instantly eligible for parole. She went to a parole hearing in November, and her release date is set to be the beginning of April. And so we're hoping that perhaps the governor will sign off on that a week or two sooner, so she can go home, ASAP and avoid contracting the virus while she's incarcerated. So in terms of her, I mean, things are looking good. We've got a couple other cases that we've been speaking to the governor's staff about and hoping that the governor will step up and cut them loose. Either commute their sentences or give them full pardons just to send them on their way. And we're kind of still waiting to hear back on a couple of those. So in terms of those clients, we're cautiously optimistic that we can sort of see something happen sooner rather than later. The others, the other clients that really we're not going to have any movement on, they're all kind of just super nervous, hunkering down and wondering. I mean, they get less information than we do, so they're not sitting there scrolling through articles and reading through tweets and trying to figure out what's the best practice for how to handle
Right.
this. They get
Right.
whatever's on cable news, so you get 3 or 4 channels, and they're kind of just seeing what's coming across the airwaves and seeing that a lot of people are getting sick and in fact dying from this. And um, they don't really have they've got your high school nurse as their healthcare provider in these prisons. They don't really have a great way of cleaning and trying to disinfect everything, and they're stuck in small spaces. So if any one person gets it, then it's going to spread like wildfire, and we've seen that in I think 3 prisons now in California. It's already happened. So
Yeah. All the conditions of a prison system feel like a powder keg for COVID-19.
definitely,
Uh, to that, and I'm sure testing and everything else around prisons is even less than the general population, which is already too low. So
certainly.
um, Um, are you working on any initiatives that are directly related to COVID-19, given this new landscape?
Um, as far as initiatives, nothing like statewide to try and get um, any movement across the entire prison population or jail population. Although we've been in on a bunch of emails and calls with various different, at least a couple of us have been with various different defense attorneys in town that are trying to work on that. But for us, no, it's more that we're just trying to encourage the governor to free those that are innocent. I mean, they should be the ones that should be cut loose first anyway, right? And they should have been, even if you thought there was some inkling of innocence, then we should have been thinking about sending them home earlier, regardless. So just hoping that the governor will take some action and do the right thing and just try to get as many people home as possible before this thing really takes off inside. So.
Yeah, yeah, agree. That's fingers crossed they take that kind of action. Um, let's shift to law schools for a moment. What do you think the impacts of COVID-19 will be on, and maybe what are you already seeing on schools such as the California Western School of Law? How do you think this will impact students and staffing levels and so on over the rest of this semester, I guess, as well as maybe more broadly the next year?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The dean of our law school has been very proactive in this. Actually, he called us. We have a very small space and had have our students kind of all bunched into this tiny little room. And so before anybody had done anything in this state or really in the entire country, he called us and said, "Look, I'm really worried. You have a lot of people in a tight space. You need to end your clinic early and start moving online." And so. Being proactive like that, I think really helped. Actually, two of our clinic students have COVID-19. They've been diagnosed, though they've not been tested because there are no tests available for the young, healthy folks that are out there. But two of our clinic students have been diagnosed with it and are
Oh, I'm sorry to
home
hear that.
resting, and they seem to be doing okay. But
Good.
it's I think the dean was right to send everybody home from our office as soon as possible, and it only took two or three more days before the entire law school shifted online. Uh, our law school has decided to for the rest of not just this trimester but the entire summer trimester. Classes will be online and online only. So that takes us through the second week in August. And so we won't have any students actually coming to campus. I think we're going to see, and I imagine this is going to probably be nationwide, that you're going to see a lot of law schools shifting to online. We already had a number of classes that were offered online where you didn't have to come to campus, and I would see a big shift, an even greater shift in that direction. I would think, I know there's ABA requirements that you have a law library. Maybe that's something that we reconsider. And I mean, all of the books are online at this point. All of the legal
Right.
research happens online. Do we really need to be coming together, first of all, spending millions of dollars on this brick and mortar, and then staffing it and having, all these paper products, actually in stock for students if they're not using them anymore. And so I think this is really going to kind of drive people further down the road of online and could very well change legal education for the future.
Yeah, I think there's a silver lining we can hope for in this crisis, which obviously has a steep human toll that we need to be aware of. But I do think it'll catalyze some really positive change in all aspects of the legal profession. And I think some of the elements of that, all the way from the courts to the education system for lawyers could use deeper embrace of technology, and hopefully this will help drive some of that.
Definitely.
Um, so, Mike, your wife is a solo attorney with her own practice. So, your household, you've got two unique perspectives, maybe on the impacts of COVID-19. You've seen the direct impacts on the California Innocence Project, and you see, maybe some of the looming and dangerous impacts on the broader prison system. I'm curious, through the lens that is your wife, what do you see happening in the solo market, maybe in particular? What impacts are you seeing on her practice and on her clients?
Yeah. So thankfully for her practice, when she started her practice, she started electronic, using Clio and really doing everything digitally. And part of that was because she started by working from home with no office space, and so it
Right.
wasn't really feasible to to have some big office with a bunch of books or papers stacked up around,
What
right?
what turned out to be a great dry run.
It was a perfect dry run, exactly. She eventually graduated to a co-working space, but about 2.5 weeks ago, we had a conversation, and we're actually expecting our second child, and it was
Oh,
like,
congratulations.
thank you. And so we're kind of like, it's probably time to both of us to start thinking we need to get home and not be exposing ourselves to this. I mean, even though there's not a lot. I haven't heard a lot of the news about kids having any issues with it, and haven't heard anything in particular about women that are pregnant. But uh, so we got Nikki moved out of the co-working space and got her shifted home, and really it's in terms of like actually getting the work done. I think for her, it's not that it's any different than it was when she was at the co-working space, with the caveat that you have a 3-year-old that's tugging on your sleeve or your arm or talking in the background
Right.
at all times, wanting to play trucks, and so that obviously has some impact on your productivity. But I think the thing that really has changed in terms of her actual ability to practice law, it really what it's come down to is she does some estate planning stuff, and you have to witness signatures, and especially if you're having trust documents signed, and so how do you do that if you're supposed to be there and you're supposed to have two witnesses in order to get a will signed or to move
Right.
property into a trust, if you're
Right.
supposed to be physically present watching somebody, and then at the end of watching them do their signature, my wife's a notary, so she actually will notarize all of the documents. And in California, you can't notarize something unless you're there physically present.
Right.
Like, that's just not possible. And so that's something that I know all of the estate planners are kind of trying to figure out, what do we do? And so, that's something that she's kind of sort of had to tackle. And at this point, at least, she's thinking that the best way to do it is just to video the signature, so they're do it over a Zoom call and watch them sign it on camera, and then she will just have to do a declaration saying that, and then if it ever is challenged in court, she has to produce the evidence to show that the signature was valid and actually happened, and this is the person that did it. In a lot of ways, though, it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. I think that the video evidence is better than just having two witnesses and a signature that says that they were who they say they were.
Right.
We actually have video of them now, and
Yeah.
here it is. So
There's no human memory to depend on, and
right,
you've always got that video evidence
right,
of what happened at hand. Another great example of we're doing things the way we've been doing them for 100 years, and
right,
maybe new technology actually affords some new
right,
solutions here. That the wills and estates certainly seems like one of the practice areas that and maybe it's necessarily so because of the stakes, but that still require wet signatures on documents, and like you said, witnesses and other measures to make sure that everything is documented properly. But how's that translate into the 21st century when we do have tools like video, even
right,
know your client rules, for example, and the tools we need around that to authenticate somebody could be completely different in
right.
the year 2020 than what we're currently leaning on.
Right. And then, like thinking about mental capacity, if I'm the attorney and I'm trying to judge somebody's mental capacity to enter into an agreement or sign a new trust, or, um, you know, if I say that they have mental capacity, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But if I have them tell a story about how they went to where, when was the last time they went to the store, and you put that all on video, it would seem like it would be a little bit better than just taking my word for it.
Right. And how about business? What trend is your wife seeing in her practice? Is that a practice area that's getting busier, maybe as people are, thinking about the future and downside scenarios in a more clear way, or is she seeing reduction in business because people are so inward focused right now?
Yeah, I would say we were certainly a bit concerned that business would be slowing down, but that's actually not been the case. So she does some business formation stuff. She does nonprofit formation, and then does some estate planning. And all three areas have we've seen some business come in along the way over the last 2 weeks. And I think people are. I think estate planning, obviously, people are a little bit freaked out by this whole thing, and maybe that's like actually lighting the fire they needed to be lit. That needed to be lit. But as far as like the business and nonprofit stuff, it seems like people are thinking that they're going to weather the storm, and things will be back where they were before in just a few short months. So if they can kind of get through that, then it'll all be okay. So a couple of minor tweaks and stuff that we've seen from some of the businesses and stuff, but by and large, the businesses, the calls are still coming in, which is great.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. So out of your apartment in San Diego, you are running the California Innocence Project. Your wife is running her own solo law firm, and you have a 3-year-old running around the house to boot.
Oh yeah, all of those things, and we're really trying to do our best to knock all those out of the park. But I got to say, I've been playing a lot of trucks over the last couple of weeks. So
Yeah. And you can't go surfing to rub salt in the wound.
no, you can run, but as it happens, I get yelled at by going a little too far into a park 2 days ago. So I guess the exonerate hat didn't scare them off. So whoops.
Well, look, this has been an amazing conversation, Mike. Maybe to close out, would love to hear any main message you might want to share with our listeners, addressing them either as legal professionals or just as people.
Just to know that this obviously is this virus is impacting everybody, and I think we're all going to get through this, but keep in mind that there are some folks that have less ability to deal with it than others, and those would be primarily those that are incarcerated, that don't have freedom to move around. And as you're sitting in your apartment and really kind of upset about being confined to your 750 square feet or whatever it is that you have, know that there's somebody that's probably in an 8x10 with no internet and no computer and no Netflix to kill the time, and also they don't have any kind of healthcare coming their way if they get sick. So it's I'm at the California Innocence Project. You can find us at californiainnocenceproject.org, and we'll see you on the other side of this thing.
That's great. Well, thanks for that parting thought, Mike. It's been great having you on the podcast. Really appreciate you joining us today. And again, thank you for all the impactful and important work you and your team at the California Innocence Project do every day, and look forward to this being behind us and you being able to get back to moving at the velocity you normally do in advancing these cases. Thanks for joining us on Daily Matters today, a podcast from Clio. Rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Daily Matters is produced by Andrew Booth, Sam Rosenthal, and Derek Boland, and hosted by yours truly, Jack Newton. Thanks also to Clio, the world's leading cloud-based legal technology provider, for supporting this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Clio, please visit clio.com. And for more resources to help lawyers navigate the challenges of COVID-19, please visit clio.com/COVID-relief.